You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense.
Whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Blake Johnson program here on Lanterns Radio Network. We're so happy to have you here with us today on this Monday, July 31st, 2017. We are literally just around the corner of the month of August, and we are well on our way through the halfway point of the year. And we are quickly approaching 2018. Cannot believe. I just have to say, I cannot believe we are already almost through the year. We've just got a few more months left. Just the other day, over the weekend, my brother turned 17 years old. 17! I can't even believe that. It's remarkable to me how fast time flies. And I'm about to turn 24 in just 2 months. So I've been really having to cherish more and more each moment that I spend here on this earth, that we spend on this earth. I think it's important because in the blink of an eye, we're already getting older and things are happening, and it's just crazy. It really is. It feels like these times go by faster and faster and faster. But anyway, I digress on that. Great to have you with us. I do hope you had a good weekend. I did as well. Went and saw the movie Dunkirk over the weekend. I'll talk a little bit about that. I thought it was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. Do I think it was, this unbelievable masterpiece that will define a generation? Probably not. But I thought it was very well done personally. I'm a history buff. I love reading about history, learning about history. Seeing it on screen is even better because it's more entertaining that way, personally. But I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. And Christopher Nolan, I have to say, one of the greatest directors in modern history. I think the Steven Spielberg of my generation. Someone who is just very brilliant in the way that he directs movies, the way that he tells a story, and the way that he lays it out, I think is quite well done throughout the years. His movies have garnered lots of praise and awards and accolades and all those things, and as they should, quite honestly, as they should. So I would encourage you to go see that movie. I thought it was very well done, and I think you'll learn something. And it's amazing how many people do not know the story of Dunkirk, and I have to say, I was one of them. I had probably read about it at some point, but I had just forgotten about the story. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it takes place in World War II, just prior to when America got involved. I think about a year and a half before we got involved in the war. But I didn't think it was slow. I heard some people say it just took forever to get through the movie. I didn't find it that way. I thought it just really got a hold of me from the very get-go. And I couldn't take my eyes off it. It was really good. Now, I do have to say, though, I did struggle a little bit because of the particular theater I went to. And, oh man, I don't mean to get sidetracked with stuff that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but just to let you know a little bit more about myself and kind of tell you more about myself. I went to this theater in Springfield, Missouri, that I'd never gone to before. It's called the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. And they have recliners there. I have never gone to a theater with recliners in it. And I felt spoiled, quite frankly. And it wasn't just the recliners, it was the price. I was looking online for showings for the movie, and I saw one that was around $8. I'm like, okay, let's go to that one. I had no idea the quality of the theater. Very, very well done. And the seating was great. It was clean. It was a big theater. They brought food to you. You just write down, the order, I guess. I didn't get any food. I just wanted to watch the movie. But they take care of you down there. They really, really do. So if you're around the Springfield area and you're wanting to catch a movie, I would highly recommend the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. Really, really good. Okay. So enough of that. Let's go ahead and get right into what happened last week and over the weekend in the news. I have so much that I want to talk to you about today. And there's a couple pieces from lanterns.buzz that I want to read to you and talk about, as well as things related to healthcare and Jeff Sessions, Piers Morgan calling out the Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, and I thought pretty satisfyingly he called her out on her idiotic rant against the president and just spewing not just hatred but outright lies. You want to talk about fake news? The left is 100% guilty of fake news, and they don't even care. They're not even trying to hide it. So we'll talk about that. And this new order on transgenders in the military, which was announced via Twitter, which I'm pretty sure that's not how you create policy, is by putting it on Twitter. But nevertheless, this is what the president wants to see happen, and quite frankly, I agree with it. And I'll explain why and give you my reasons for that. But I want to start with this debacle called socialized medicine, big government tyranny. As you are probably well aware by now, the 11-month-old, just shy of being a year-old baby Charlie Gard had passed away. I believe it was on Friday. It could have been late Thursday night. It was over in England, so they're a few hours ahead of us. Passed away because they took him off life support, and just I think it was either last Sunday or last Monday when the parents decided to end their legal fight because, well, from what I was hearing, even the doctors who had hope before no longer had hope for Charlie because, well, in my opinion, the way I'm seeing it, he'd been in the hospital so long, it really was now too late to find a cure for him because he had been held prisoner, and that's my language. He had been held prisoner by this fake hospital that claims to care about life, except when it's inconvenient for them. Held prisoner and didn't allow the parents to provide treatment, take the baby over to America for treatment from doctors who have worked on this very disease before and have had cases of curing this rare disease. Nope, can't do that. The baby has to die with dignity. Well, what dignity is there in holding someone captive and forcing them to die? And not even giving them a chance to live when other people have been given the chance to live and are in fact still alive today. I want to read to you from Lanterns. This is a open letter. This was posted a week ago today. An open letter to Charlie Gard, written by Sarah Moore. You can find it at lanterns.buzz. It says, "Dear Charlie, here you are less than 2 weeks from your first birthday. Other 1-year-olds have birthday parties. You will have a burial. Other 1-year-olds receive gifts. You weren't even afforded the gift of an attempted treatment. Other 1-year-olds take their first wonderful taste of birthday cake. There will be no food or water for you. We dream for our children. We see joy in life that we sometimes lose as adults. We see hope for the impossible. We believe with full abandon that our children can accomplish all the things that we couldn't, all the things they set their hearts to doing. Children are confident and unafraid, while adults are insecure and cowardly. As adults, we get so trapped up in society and culture and in what we are supposed to think and believe that we stop believing in the impossible. Children haven't learned about impossibility yet. You, Charlie, haven't learned about impossibility yet. In your spirit, in the part of you that the doctors and nurses cannot measure, you are still innocent and unconquerable. The world and all its troubles are just waiting for you to dream enormous dreams that will change the course of mankind, because you, Charlie, are a world changer. Every child is. There is no sickness, no poverty, no sorrow that can change this fact. Every child, and so every adult, is brought into this life with purpose. And if we're lucky, we might see it. More likely, someone else will see it in us. I see it in you. And I know it isn't fair. Your parents had all of those hopes and dreams for you. And they've been dashed more than most of us can understand. First by a diagnosis, and then by a death sentence. We wanted to believe that in this case, someone could make the difference and save your life. We knew what your doctors said, and we respect them. We know they serve because they want to protect human life. We know that they want the best for you. But we also know that other doctors believed there was another option, and we desperately wanted to believe that their voices would be heard as your own. If nothing else, we desperately wanted to believe that your dear parents would be given every possible chance, no matter how slim the odds, to see you grow and thrive, to see you dream and hope and change the world. We desperately wanted to believe that you would be given every possible chance, no matter how slim the odds, because we believe it innately in our gut that you are here for a purpose. You skip down here towards the end. It says, in the end, though, every hope and dream for your life has been swallowed in grief. You are proving everyone wrong. You have done more to alter the course of history in your short life than most of us will in 80 or 90 years of chasing dreams. And maybe you didn't choose it. Maybe you would never have chosen it. Maybe, given the choice, you'd rather live to find the cure for the awful situation that took your life, whether that is a disease or a government. But nevertheless, the eyes of the world are watching, waiting, wondering, not for the end of your life, but for the end of your story, the end of your legacy. And who knows but that you were put here in this position for such a time as this. You, Charlie Gard, are changing the world. You, Charlie Gard, are my hero. Again, that was written by Sarah Moore on lanterns.buzz. I had read that a week ago, and after the parents decided that they weren't going to pursue legal means to get Charlie Gard discharged from the hospital, I figured it was only a matter of days that he would pass away. So when I got the news Friday that he had indeed passed away, I immediately thought of this piece that I had read almost a week prior. Can you imagine? Even begin to imagine what it must feel like for these parents. You know, we're told, people like myself are told, you never really know what it's like to love, real, true, deep love, until you have a child, until you hold that child in your arms. Then you know what it's like to love, what it's like and what it means to be selfless, to give everything you have for another life. these parents didn't get to experience that love for very long. They still love their child deeply. But now that child is no longer with them because he's been snatched by the hands of government, by the hands of those who believe that they're God, that they can decide who lives and who dies. This, my friends, is the tragedy of big government tyranny. This is what happens when you have socialism. And make no mistake about it, I know there are many in my generation who think that socialism is this great, all-powerful, all-freeing thing that will just absolutely make everyone's lives better. It will make people no longer poor. It will take them out of poverty. It will punish the rich who are oppressing society. But it does the exact opposite of that. It takes power away from the individual and gives it to the government, who are filled with men and women with power and egos, who are detached from society, detached from real life, from the lives of people like Charlie Gard. Because see, when you're in government, when you have this power, when you can decide who's worth saving and who's not, you're not with the family. You're not with this baby. You don't have to look this baby in the eye or look these parents in the eyes and tell them you're not worth saving. Even though there are examples of people being saved. This is the 21st century with modern medicine. We have the ability to at least try. But we're not going to do that because we don't believe they can be saved. But not only that, no, the parents, they can't be with their kid. They can't be with their child, who they created together, helped create together. No, can't do that. We, as a government, have to decide this. When we come back, I want to talk to you about another piece from Lanterns that goes right along with this story, and it talks about the tyranny of socialism. And it's in your face, and it says, do you want this to happen here? Do you really think this is a good idea? Because this is happening in today's world. Socialism and the tyranny of government and the deterioration of society is happening today in countries today. It's not some old fable, some old myth. We have examples. And we shouldn't be so short-sighted to think that that can happen here, because we are living in an age, in a culture, where people think that this kind of government, this kind of system is good. We can't have small government. We can't have liberty. We can't have real freedom. We can't have faith, morality, Christ. Those are hateful. Man must become God. We are the real smart people in this society. We don't need anybody else. When you have a culture and a society filled with that, then this is what you end up with. Be right back on the Blake Johnson program here on Lanterns Radio Network. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to the Blake Johnson program here on Lanterns Radio Network. If you want to keep in contact with the show, highly encourage you to follow me on Facebook at facebook.com. Just go to the Blake Johnson Program on there. You can also follow this show on Spreaker. That's speaker with an extra R, Spreaker.com. Just go to Lanterns, I think it's Lanterns Media Network or Lanterns Radio Network, and you'll find my show up there. Or you can just go to Spreaker.com/show/The Blake Johnson Program, and you will find my show on there as well. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, a few other platforms, I believe, and also listen to it on lanterns.buzz at the radio tab. Just go to lanterns.buzz into the radio tab, and you'll find it on there as well. All right, so we are talking about this idea of socialism and how we have modern-day examples of it destroying societies, destroying civilizations. It's already taken lives like Charlie Gard and many, many others, including some in this country, because we are not living and operating as a constitutional republic anymore. We're living, as Mark Levin succinctly says, a post-constitutional system. We have a constitution. We could abide by it. But we, so many of us and our leaders, don't read it, don't know it, don't care about it. But here's a modern day example of something that I think perfectly illustrates the destruction of socialism, and not just socialism, but the destruction of a country when a society degrades into moral depravity. This is written by Mary Ramirez. She is not just a contributor to Lantern, she is also a full-time writer and contributor to the Chris Salcedo Show on the Blaze Radio Network. And she is the creator of afuturefree.com. She writes about Venezuela. It's a piece titled, Venezuela's Hell, Could It Happen Here? And she goes to lay out many examples of how the society there has really deteriorated. Can't even say that word today, I'm having a hard time. But how they have really struggled because of the lack of food and just modern day supplies that we find at our local, general store or our local Walmart. Laying out examples of them struggling to find food, having to break into a zoo to eat the animals. There's a story from the Telegraph showing hungry Venezuelans breaking into the zoo to butcher a horse for food, or hunting cats and dogs for meals because they can't get meat anywhere else. Stealing from people, lots of cases of theft, finding diapers and flour and milk and toilet paper, just modern day necessities that we don't even have to worry about here because of the blessings of the free market system. And she goes on to ask, could we ever get to such a point where we are like a modern day Venezuela? She brings this point up. She says, Campus Reform recently interviewed college students in Washington, D.C., asking them, 1, whether or not socialism was a good thing, and 2, if they even knew what socialism means. There is a video of that on hotair.com. It was taken just a couple of weeks ago. This is what we come to find out, especially through the Washington Post. I did this study about a year or so ago, asking the millennials, my generation, if they support the idea of a socialist president. So this was in the thick of the 2016 election. And overwhelmingly, 69% said yes, they do support this. They think socialism is a good thing, and we should have a president who is a socialist. But, ironically, they can't even define what socialism is. As it says here, by and large, people believe that socialism, this is from lanterns.buzz, simply helps people. Oh, okay. They just don't know quite how to bring this system to fruition, which brings us to Venezuela. Venezuela, the formerly richest country in South America, saw socialism take root firmly when Hugo Chavez was elected. Chavez decided to start taking his oil-rich nation's money and redistribute it to eliminate poverty. At the same time, Chavez nationalized, or in other words, he took over oil, agriculture, banks, cement and glass production, gold, steel, telecommunications, electricity, transportation, and tourism. Then oil prices fell, which is bad news for a country that relies on oil for 95% of its export income. Just think of that. Oil is such a ginormous resource for your country. You have to have oil to survive, and you have to be able to export to get your money in so you can live. But because Chavez nationalized this and took it over, yeah, oil prices fell, but so did people's living standards. They weren't able to function. Continuing on here, it says, naturally, with a drastically reduced oil income that can no longer support the redistributive social programs Chavez enacted, and with vast swaths of the nation's industry nationalized, it's no surprise that the people are suddenly impoverished and livid about it. Chavez artificially helped his people by redistributing the nation's wealth. That money was only there because the rest of the world was willing to pay that price for that oil at that time. And it goes on, and it talks more about the destruction of that country. And I think the most important part of this whole thing is it says, people think that socialism somehow produces people like Mother Teresa and Santa Claus and perpetual prosperity all rolled into one. It says, here's the thing, though. There's a reason why people like Mother Teresa are so revered. It's because they are rare. True selflessness is tough to come by because we're all humans with beating hearts, which subsequently means we're all subject to thinking about numero one, something that makes a collectivist utopia unrealistic. So in other words, like I was saying in the last segment, one of the big reasons that socialism doesn't work is because people are involved in it. You don't have checks and balances with socialism. It's the government's role to decide who gets what. And they are the ones in power. And there's nothing preventing them. There's nothing standing in their way. In collectivist ideologies, everyone involved must suppress their own wants and needs. That destroys incentive, which destroys ingenuity, which destroys new, better, and more successful ideas. Not only does collectivism destroy the engines that drive economic growth, but government involvement is the kiss of death. There's a reason why we talk in terms of bureaucratic red tape. There isn't a single government program that works well. Just look at our debt. Over $22 trillion in government dollars spent to combat poverty. And yet somehow the poverty rate hasn't budged. Look at Medicare, Social Security. These things have tanked. These things are in real, true danger. Look at Obamacare. I'll get to that in just a moment. All these things have been created by the government, thinking that they are the ones that can solve these problems, when really, in all seriousness, these things destroy civilizations. They take away opportunity. So why are people my age, with so many amazing and perfect examples of the free market working and saving lives here, why people are coming into this country and escaping the tyranny of places like Venezuela? Why, with all of this information, are they believing that somehow we are the evil ones? Well, for one thing, they are being taught that the system that we're living in right now is a pure constitutional republic, is a pure capitalist society. This is what capitalism looks like when you give power to the greedy. But they're not being taught that no, we have strayed from that path. We are not operating as a purely constitutional system. a system of checks and balances. We are not operating under a truly free market system. We are operating under statism, under crony capitalism. But they're not being taught that, and they're certainly not being taught that the Democrats are in large part to blame for this society. And the Republicans share much of the blame as well, particularly since they started the Progressive Party. But the Democrats have really stepped on the accelerator as of late. So, they are being taught this in schools. They are being indoctrinated. They're being taught that our founders believed in this kind of system. They believed in the power of the elite, and they didn't believe in the power of the individual. They believed that you're just too stupid. But isn't that exactly what the left is doing? Isn't that why they're trying to jam big government healthcare down our throats? That's why Nancy Pelosi says, well, we have to pass it before we can find out what's in it. That's why Hillary Clinton has the gall to run for president, even though she is full of corruption and abusing the very powers given to her family and her husband. And I mean, over and over again, you see the left constantly abusing the very things that they claim to uphold. And why is that? What is this liberalism? Well, liberalism used to mean liberty. But I contend it still does mean liberty, but just the wrong kind of liberty. Liberty, the ones that they're pursuing, is the idea of positive liberty. This idea that you're more free when the government has more control. As opposed to the idea of negative liberty, which Barack Obama criticized. This idea that the government only has certain responsibilities, and they are limited. There are several things the government cannot do, and should not do, and must not do, outlined in the Constitution. But they don't believe in negative liberty. They believe in positive liberty for them. So that is the system that we're operating on. But too many of us are blindsided by that. And I say us, meaning my generation. We're going to take a break and come right back here on the Blake Johnson program. Stay tuned. More news and analysis coming up next.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
You know, I have to say, at the outset here, I find it truly ironic that over this past week, many of us were mourning the death of Charlie Gard, who was allowed to die, killed by this hospital that kept him prisoner. We mourned for the family, and we still are, over here in this country, and yet, at the same time that was happening, the fools, the creatures in this country, otherwise known as politicians, decided that they are going to yet again break their word on repealing Obamacare, government-run healthcare, which really and truly paves the way for the kind of socialized medicine that you were seeing over in England and Great Britain. At the same time that we think it is terrible, and that what's happening over England is happening over there, we keep electing these politicians who have been in office for decades and who have a pretty clear track record of lying to the American people. going back on their word yet again from a 2015 repeal bill that was supposed to repeal Obamacare. Now, of course, you have the Senate and the House going all for this. Oh, we've got to have this. We have got to repeal Obamacare. Even though 2 years ago we had a different president who clearly, obviously, was not going to allow for a repeal of his own health care plan that he firmly believes in. But they passed it, and they sent it to his desk, and lo and behold, shockingly, he vetoed it. Well, now there's a different man in the White House. There's a new sheriff in town, a sheriff who believes in the free market system, a sheriff who believes in returning power back to the people and getting power out of the hands of the slimy politicians. Even though he has said on the campaign trail multiple times that he believes in universal health care, a system where the government pays for it, which obviously is nothing like the system that we have now. But a guy who believes in that and has shown that he is more than willing to sign whatever legislation comes to his desk. Oh, but it's not Donald Trump's fault. Oh, it's these darn Republicans who just can't get their act together. Let me tell you something, gang. There is plenty of blame to go around. And I do have to give credit where credit is due. As much as I am not a big fan of this man, he did lay out some honesty. And I contend he laid it out because he's no longer in power. But I want to play for you this clip of John Boehner, former Speaker of the House, and his thoughts on the GOP's attempt to somehow repeal Obamacare, and his thoughts on if that's even a possibility. Take a listen to this.
Here we are, 7 months into this year, and yet they've not passed this bill. Now, they're not going to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's been around too long, and the American people have gotten accustomed to it. Governors have gotten accustomed to this Medicaid expansion. And so trying to pull it back is really not going to work. But what they can do, though, is move it away from government control, where the states have more control over what happens, and individuals have more control. So when it's all said and done, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to have an employer mandate anymore. You're not going to have the individual mandate. The Medicaid expansion will be there. The governors will have more control over their Medicaid populations and how to get them care. And a lot of the Obamacare taxes will probably go. But they've had a tough time getting there. But if they can't do healthcare reform, I don't know how they would ever do tax reform.
Okay, so I agree with much of what he said in terms of the truth about the situation. Now, they have rejected the Ted Cruz consumer choice option that he was going to have in that bill and did propose this idea that, people could choose whether or not they wanted into the federal system or whether they wanted a more private option. Sounds so ridiculous, right? Well, apparently to those in Washington it did, because not only did the Democrats, who obviously were going to fall in line and vote against the repeal, but so did several of the Republicans. One being an really freaking old fart named John McCain, who I guess we're supposed to just ignore because he's sick. Well, look, here's the thing. Obviously, I feel bad for the man personally. Him having a tumor, him going through cancer, it's awful. I've had family members die of cancer. It is a truly, truly horrific disease that plagues all of society today. But that is no excuse to side with the left and to side with tyranny. And make no mistake, that's what we're facing here, folks. That's exactly what we're facing with. John McCain goes up in front of the Senate, and his first vote in the Senate after he was released from the hospital after being told about his condition, goes up in front of the Senate and gives this great speech, so-called great speech that everyone says people are going to remember for generations from now, as if it's a good thing. Quite frankly, I hope they remember this. People need to remember this speech, because it is a speech that perfectly describes, in many ways, the ways that people in Washington feel about you. Been looking for the specific clip so I could play it for you. Don't have time to play it right now. But what he did, the main part I want to focus on is the part where he gets up and says, essentially, stop listening to the, quote, loudmouths on the radio, internet, and television. To hell with them. Really? To hell with them. And it ended in erupt applause over that line. Oh yes. Get rid of those idiots, those crazy people on radio, TV, and internet. Well, let me tell you something. Ladies and gentlemen, what he's referring to, make no mistake about it, he's not talking about the establishment, people on the media, who think that the very idea of repealing Obamacare is going to slaughter thousands of people like Bernie Sanders believes, and he's not establishment. He's a socialist. He's an idiot. He's a radical. He's not talking about them. He's talking about people like you and me. Now, as insignificant as my role is in the media, I still have a place in radio. I'm doing radio. I'm in media at some extent. But it goes much deeper than media. What he's talking about, he is talking about people like you. People who care about liberty. People who don't want the government's grubby hands getting into all of their affairs, telling them how they have to live their life, telling them what doctor they have to see. You know, this whole lie of if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plane, you can keep your plane. Well, we know that's not true. We know that's not true. And that's what we loudmouths on the radio and internet and TV have been saying for years. But nobody wanted to listen to that. We were called liars, haters. Well, now that this is clearly true, we are still being called liars and haters. Even though the fake news is clearly coming from the progressives, who don't give a lick about honesty, who haven't for the past 7 years, at least on this particular issue. He's talking about rural Americans who aren't in Washington, aren't in these big cities, lost away from how society really functions. He's talking about those who have to live under these very rules and regulations that the government passes, but doesn't seem to think it's appropriate for their own people to live under. Because as you may know, people in Washington, they don't live under Obamacare. At least they don't have to. They don't have to live under big government-run healthcare. They have a pretty sweet healthcare package, in addition to the ginormous salary they're making per year. So they don't... Why should they care? Look at the power they have. Look at the power that we have given them over the decades. Why should they care? They don't. We're loudmouths. We say one thing and do another. You know, and quite frankly, I'm done with merely trashing the left and only going after the left as if they're the only ones who are responsible for this. Plenty of blame goes on our side. And I'm not talking about people, I'm not necessarily talking about people who really struggled during this election, who didn't like the options, but certainly didn't want Hillary. I'm talking about those who embrace nationalism, who embrace populism, who embrace so-called conservative progressivism. This idea that we can perfect man through the state, but only when our guy is in charge. Because when you put the Democrats in charge, of course, they're terrible. But when a Republican is in charge, when a strong man is in charge, like Donald Trump, then we get things done. Oh, really? How's that going for you? 7 months into a presidency, look where that's gotten us. Almost 7 months. How many things have really been accomplished? I mean, yeah, you've got Neil Gorsuch, a huge win, I think. So far, it's proven to be quite a big victory. But that's the Supreme Court. And don't we place way, way too much reliance in 9 unelected judges? Hasn't the Supreme Court, hasn't the judicial branch grown well out of proportion, well out of the idea that our founders had for our government? You have some of the EPA regulations, the Paris Accords, which I think were really good. But this is what I'm talking about, gang. I'm not even making this purely about Trump. But quite frankly, I'm more irritated with many of the American people than I am those in Washington. Because those in Washington, those in power, are a reflection in many parts to our society. Now, that's not to say that everyone who voted for Trump or everyone who voted for these politicians knew exactly what they were going to do. Because politicians lie. People lie. They are dishonest. They fool you. But as the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, here's the thing, gang. We have been fooled thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So the blame really goes on us. Because we keep doing this over and over again. We are living the very definition of insanity, where we keep making the same mistake over and over again, expecting a different result. This is our creation. We have to start taking responsibility for our own mistakes. Now again, I'm not saying that just because you voted for Donald Trump, that makes you a bad person. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you start making excuses for your own side that you would never make for the other side, then you are the other side. You are that which you despise. And that's the truth. This healthcare debacle, yeah, it is partly to blame on Washington, partly to blame on Congress, partly to blame on the Republicans and the Democrats who don't give a rip about you or your life. But you see what I was talking before? We were set upon a creation of checks and balances. We didn't always used to be this way. We used to be a country that embraced small government principles, limited government, and personal responsibility. But it's been too long. Way too long. We are sick as a culture. We are sick as a society. What's the answer? Wake the heck up. Get your head out of your butt and start using the brain that God gave you. No, it's not going to make you popular, but it's much better than the alternative. Back in just a minute on the Blake Johnson program. Thank you for staying with us. Be right back. Alright, welcome back everyone to the Blake Johnson program. In these last remaining minutes here on the show, have a few more things to get into. I was really wanting to delve deeply into this story about J.K. Rowling going after Donald Trump and spreading this fake news video. It is actually a fake video. It's deceptively edited. A video supposedly of Donald Trump snubbing a disabled kid in a wheelchair. Turns out that's not the case at all. He shook his hand, he acknowledged him, but of course J.K. Rowling, the witchcraft author of Harry Potter, decided it would be so appropriate for her to not only spread this piece of propaganda on her Twitter site, but to trash the president, call him a monster. And even though it was pointed out multiple times that this video is fake, she won't delete it. She refuses to delete this. Quite the author of fiction, no? But I wanted to spend this last segment talking about the transgender issue, the case of President Trump deciding, I guess, on Twitter, which is not the place for policy decisions at all, to permanently ban, or at least while he's in office, permanently ban transgenders from serving in the military. Now, what do I think about all this? Well, quite honestly, I fully support this. I do not like the fact that President Obama, who, by the way, through a few years, the first part of his administration, also didn't allow transgenders in the military, but no one wants to bring that up. But at the same time, transgenderism, first of all, isn't real. Okay? You can't actually transition from one gender to another. I know that may come as a shock to those on the left, but no, Bruce Jenner is still Bruce Jenner. Chelsea Manning is still Bradley Manning, and a traitor at that. You cannot change from one gender to another. That does not happen. You can look like anyone you want to, but you cannot change who you are. You can't change DNA. But there's this piece on the Daily Signal that I would highly encourage you to check out from Walt Heyer. He wrote it on the 26th, and he used to be someone who struggled with transgenderism. He wrote here that he agrees with the decision that the president made. He thinks that it's the right decision. And it's a lengthy piece, not extremely lengthy, but lengthy enough. It's something that you should definitely give your time and attention to. But he talks about how, we cannot make the military a place for, trying out and experimenting with these social changes that we are, as a society, experimenting with. That is not the place. That is not what the military is supposed to be about. It's about killing the enemy in the most effective way possible. That's why you shouldn't anyway, have women in the front lines. At the very front, you should not have that, because physically speaking, most women are not capable of handling that. And there's more factors than that involved, but I don't want to get into just that part of it. But this idea of having mentally ill people, and make no mistake, that is what these people are. They are mentally ill. That doesn't mean they're less than human, but there is something wrong with them inside. They need help. They do not need to be placed in the military, where you're already going to be struggling with PTSD once you get out. But then not to mention the rate of suicide. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. If anything, this is meant to protect them and to protect us. It's not meant to hurt anybody. But of course, some people don't agree with that, including the ever so sleazy, never going to make a career in public office again, Chris Christie, the New Jersey governor, who signed a bill into law requiring the Commissioner of Education to develop guidelines regarding transgender students, including allowing them to use restrooms and locker rooms that align with their gender identity rather than biological gender. And it gets even better. Now teachers are required to refer to those students with the gender pronouns that they prefer to use, subscribe to them. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in absolute madness. Absolute madness. I think this is the 10th or 11th state to make this a part of their policy. When are we going to wake up? The answer, not anytime in the near future. Because we refuse to allow for sanity, for common sense, for pure nature and science to take its course. I'm sorry, I don't care what the left says. It is a mental illness. It is absolutely serious. And we have to treat it that way. And it's rare. It's a disease. Anyway, that's going to do it for the Blake Johnson program. I highly encourage you to check those stories out. Give them a read. There's so much more I wanted to get into, but we're running out of time today. But I will see you back here next time on Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, here in Spreaker and Lanterns.buzz. See you next time, everyone, and God bless.